Good morning, all. I just want to say a quick note on a serious theme before we get kicked off today. We're very mindful that the world continues to spin around us, and today there was a terrible shooting in Thailand. And so just for Hunter watching us, we're thinking about you and the folks back in Thailand, and it's a reminder to us that we live in a world where, we all got to come together to confront some of these issues. So, Hunter, we're thinking about you this morning. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the Standing Committee on National Defense. Today, we're going to be considering the issues related to the Federal Sustainment Development Act, as well as implications for national defense with the Defense, Energy, and Environmental Strategy. And specifically, we're going to be talking about the issue of greening defense. To help us with our committee work, we're very pleased this morning to be joined with three witnesses. We have the Assistant Deputy Minister for Infrastructure and Environment from National Defense, Dominic Beret. We have the Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, Vice Admiral Fernando Urrutia Jimenez, and from Public Services and Procurement Canada, the ADM for Defense and Marine Procurement Branch, Mr. Alexandre Picard. Now, although we had originally 90 minutes planned for a session today, I've just been advised by the Secretary that unfortunately we're going to have votes that are going to be starting in about 30 minutes or so. So if it's really necessary for the committee, if we can always bring back the witnesses, we'd obviously welcome to have you back if that may be necessary. So with that in mind, I propose we're going to have 3 rounds of questions, each with a follow-up with my fellow committee members, with the starting with myself and then the member from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, Carrie Cheryl Gallant Buck, who is our member of the Conservative Party, of course, and Omer Christopher Lavoie Normandin, the Bloc Québécois member from Saint-Jean, Quebec. With this in mind, I understand, Ms. Bray, that you actually have some opening remarks that you'd like to share with the committee. And after that, we'll look forward to you and your colleagues' responses to some of our questions. So, Ms. Bray, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Chair and honourable members of the committee. Thank you for receiving our update on greening defence today. I am Assistant Deputy Minister, Infrastructure and Environment, leading our defence team's approach to this ever-critical portfolio. I'm joined today by my esteemed colleagues, Monsieur Alex Picard, Assistant Deputy Minister, Defence and Marine Procurement from Public Service Procurement Canada, and the Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, Vice Admiral Fernando Urrutia, who will share the Navy's initiatives in this domain. As Canadians are increasingly experiencing across the country, climate change is an existential threat. We have seen how the recent Hurricane Fiona has affected our maritime provinces and Quebec, and the unprecedented devastation from such a force of nature. The Canadian Armed Forces have deployed hundreds of members to assist with the post-storm effort. They have consistently supported Canadian population through Operation Lentis, the Canadian Armed Forces response to natural disasters in Canada. Introduced in 2017, the Greening Government Strategy is the Government of Canada's federal directive to transition to net zero carbon and climate resilient operations, while also reducing environmental impacts beyond carbon, including waste, water, biodiversity. This strategy targets the entire Government of Canada, including real property, procurement, mobility fleets, and more. With this whole-of-government approach, Canada's strategy sets a target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from federal operations by 40% aspirationally by 2025, and to reach net zero by 2050 relative to the 2005 levels. As one of Canada's largest employers and maintainers of equipment and infrastructure, including over 20,000 buildings, greenhouse gas emissions for DND and the CAF represent about 59% of the federal total. We know we have a role to play in helping the Government of Canada meet its climate objectives. The Department is committed to finding opportunities within our portfolio to support the whole-of-government effort toward environmental security. Aligned with strong, secure, and engaged defense policy, and in response to the Federal Sustainable Development Act, the Department has developed the Defense, Energy, and Environment Strategy. This new strategy is our plan to improve energy efficiency and reduce environmental impacts across defense activities. It will help us meet our greening targets, improve energy efficiency, integrate climate change adaptation into our programs, maintain sustainable real property, and strengthen our greening procurement processes. In doing so, we will evolve as a more environmentally sustainable organization and directly contribute to meeting Canada's climate change targets. D&D CAF are undertaking several initiatives and activities to transition to net zero carbon and climate resilient operations. However, it is essential to highlight that defense capability is dependent on energy to fuel the fleets and equipment of the Canadian Armed Forces. It provides our members with portable power and sustains military camps, some of which are in challenging, unpredictable, or extreme environments that draw heavily on energy sources. Defense also operates and maintains an extensive range of infrastructure across the country, extending as far north as the high Arctic. Having access to reliable, affordable energy when and where it is needed is necessary to ensure defense capability, operational readiness, sustainability, and responsiveness by the defense team to deliver on its mandate. While greenhouse gas reduction opportunities exist within all aspects of the operational portfolio, reducing emissions from military fleets and operations are more challenging. Reliable, low-carbon, and renewable fuels are not yet broadly available to power the essential military equipment defense needs. In response to the net zero objective, defense will continue to support innovative approaches to increase energy efficiency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions from military activities without compromising capabilities or operations. To mitigate this impact, we are taking concrete steps by implementing reduction measures in our real property portfolio, such as energy performance contracts at defense installations across the country, clean energy purchases, heating plant upgrades, disposal of old buildings, and improved energy management. To date, the implementation of our strategy, especially that of our real property initiatives, has led to the reduction of our greenhouse gas emissions by 38% from the 2005 baseline. Well positioned to meet and exceed our 40% target by 2025. One way we continue to reduce levels of greenhouse gas emissions is through the modernization of our commercial vehicle fleet. We are currently seeing 85% of the fleet purchases as zero emissions or hybrid, with a target of reaching 100% in 2023. We're also making great progress through our energy performance contracts in the retrofit of our infrastructure. At this time, 71% of eligible bases have been assessed, and 46% of those targeted have begun implementing their contracts. In addition, 74% of electricity consumed in carbon-intensive grids are clean electricity. Our goal is to reach 100% by 2025. Sustainable real property includes sustainable training areas. Training and readiness exercises are necessary for combat-ready forces at sea, on land, and in the air. While ensuring our training areas are effective for preparing our forces, we also understand they must be managed sustainably. We are aware that past environmental practices, while considered acceptable at the time, have left their mark on the Canadian landscape. We are committed to responsibly managing the effects of this operational legacy. We are taking concrete and significant steps to address environmental contamination, including risks posed by unexploded explosive ordnance in Canada. Sustainability efforts can be seen in the Royal Canadian Navy's collaboration with NATO allies when conducting international exercises in marine locations, such as Cutlass Fury exercise, held every 2 years in the North Atlantic Ocean. Environmental and species considerations help shape the locations for this exercise to minimize impact on the environment. At CFB Esquimalt, The Navy is addressing historical contamination that has accumulated in the Esquimalt Harbor after centuries of military, commercial, and industrial use. This remediation project continues to create positive impacts for the environment and local communities, including for the local First Nations, in whose territory the work took place. My colleague from the Navy is here today to share their experiences in greening defense. A critical piece of enabling greening defense is procurement. Green procurement must integrate environmental performance considerations into the life cycle of goods and services and inform procurement decision-making. But the challenge in the defense space is to generate innovation while adhering to existing policy requirements and supporting operational effectiveness. We are making great strides by adopting a whole-of-society approach to this issue, which includes contractors, Government of Canada support programs and incentives, as well as academia, to procure innovative solutions that will allow us to meet our goals. PSPC plays a strategic role by enabling industry through its outreach activities and provision of guides, procurement tools, and delivering strategic procurement advice to the CAF and D&D. Meeting our targets is best achieved through collaboration with partners. As part of our strategy, we are currently working with PSPC to develop a sustainable packaging national master standing offer. We will consult industry on their capability to provide sustainable packaging and to meet other environmental and sustainability requirements. The new standing offer is expected in 2024. We are pleased to be reporting today to Canadians and parliamentarians on the results of our energy and environment strategy. As we face the challenges of climate change, we remain determined and focused on meeting our greenhouse gas reduction targets and net zero goals. As we evolve as a more environmentally sustainable organization, we remain committed to providing the Government of Canada and Canadians with a CAF ready to respond at home and abroad. Mr. Chair, thank you. We are ready to take your questions.
Ms. Bray, thank you very much for setting the scene for this morning's discussions. Really quite an impressive overall update in terms of where national defense is, in terms of your overall efforts in terms of dealing with the energy and environmental challenges that we all face. We know that a lot of our colleagues in Parliament don't necessarily think that climate change is much of a problem, and that we should not be addressing these issues. But we're really pleased to see the effort that you're taking in support of our government's efforts. And if I could, I really just wanted to say, first of all, really appreciate seeing the focus that you've got in terms of the operational effectiveness of the Canadian Forces not being affected by these, but being enhanced. And Admiral, I'm wondering if I could start a question for you. When you're addressing the members of the Navy, what are the messages that you give to them as to why this is so important for the Navy today and in the future?
Yes, sir. Well, 50% of pollution of defense activities are from the Navy. So, we know our fleet are using diesel. Diesel is so contaminating the environment, and we need to change our engine systems. The people need to change culture too, because our waste is really, really high, sir. We made some statistics research about what's the behavior of the people around our operations and inside our headquarters. And it's important, sir. Navy is really, really an important part to this change, and we are making some doctrines to change it, sir.
Great, thank you, Admiral. And for ADMIE, just a quick little follow-up in terms of the overall approach with the rest of the operational fleets in the Air Force, the Army. How is that all being coordinated within national defense?
When it comes to ADMIE, our main focus with regards to leading this portfolio, of course, the best bang for our buck is going to be through the infrastructure at this point in time. It is our largest portfolio, and as you, I'm sure you understand, that large portfolio spans across the country, which means that it's in the hands of our base commanders, it's in the hands of our wing commanders, and they play a really big part in keeping this strategy alive, helping us meet our targets. A recent initiative, for example, would be the implementation of energy managers. I believe energy managers. And these energy managers are focused on trying to find those efficiencies for these base and wing commanders so that we can have this bottom-up approach to meeting our targets and really living and having that new culture of greening defense across the country.
All right, thank you very much. So just turning over to my colleague, Ms. Buck-Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've got a question. Thank you for ADM procurement at PSPC. Canada's got a history of not delivering ships or planes on time or on budget. They get canceled, delayed, specs change after steel's cut. Our procurement under this government is a mess. So how much more time will these greening measures add to ships that are already late? Can you explain to us how this is value for money? And can you tell us how PSPC will ensure efforts to reduce emissions from Canada's NSS National Shipbuilding Strategy fleets will not compromise operational readiness? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So let's be honest here. Historically, we have to recognize that procurement requires a need for improvement. And so for the past years, we've put a lot of effort in modernizing and streamlining procurement processes. For example, we're investing a lot of effort, time, and money into the electronic procurement system. So this is going to be a government-wide centralized system for procurement, which will improve timelines, improve accessibility to procurement opportunities for all communities, including our Indigenous and underrepresented communities. So this will have a major impact on the procurement processes. We're also streamlining. Another example would be in the security front, where contracts with security requirements, which are most of the contracts in defense space, we moved recently from requiring companies to be cleared in order to bid on contracts, which was a barrier to entry. And so going forward since 2021, the companies only need to be cleared at the time of contract award. So we're really opening the doors for different proponents to come and bid on contracts. So that's going to also improve timelines. With respect to environmental considerations, this is really a core value that's built into all of our tools. And as my colleague mentioned, throughout the life cycle of the procurements, we're looking at environmental measures, and we want results. So that's one of the criteria that we're juggling with, which of course can add some complexity, but the tools we've built in are very streamlined. We've got some standardized also standing offers. So this will increase the speed at which we're doing these procurements.
That was 3 questions that you asked. That was supposed to be like one question with a follow-up, but thank you for the response. Monsieur Lavoie Normandin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just want to thank the witnesses for appearing here this morning in front of the committee, and Admiral specifically for your service. First question, I guess, is for Ms. Brace. So I was really happy to hear that D&D CAF is well on the way of reaching its targets for 2025 with a view to 2050. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on how we can take the initiative and actually surpass the benchmarks that have been set for those dates.
Thank you very much for your question. I think we're well positioned to do exactly that. As I stated, the original target was 2030, and so we're easily 5 years ahead of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by that benchmark. And by having this strategy, which is relatively new, the 20 to 23 strategy is relatively new. We table the results to Parliament on an annual basis, but the strategy is reviewed and reinvigorated every 3 years. So we're constantly looking for those opportunities where we can do more. And so examples of that would be, for example, partnering with our innovation partners in order to find those innovative solutions. You met Dr. Chow yesterday, who spoke at length about ideas, and that's a key partner for us in finding those new opportunities so that we can advance and go beyond those targets.
Great. Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, let me thank you for that, that answer. Could you just explain what are the greatest challenges, the biggest boulders in your portfolio in trying to reach the goals from the strategy?
Absolutely. It's, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, one of our greatest challenges is our military operations. It's all of the platforms that consume those fuels for which we do not currently have the quantity or the quality of fuels required in Canada to be able to have those platforms be more energy efficient. And we can't change all of our fleets all at the same time right now. This is going to take some time. It's going to be an iterative process. We're going to do that through incremental changes to our platforms. We're going to build it into the new procurement strategies, as my colleague, Monsieur Picard, has mentioned, and as my colleague, the Royal Canadian Navy Commander, has mentioned with regards to his fleet.
Okay, thank you.
So if I could come back, Admiral, to one of the challenges I think for the Navy is you have your current set of capabilities, and you've got, of course, a number of new ships and fleets that are coming into the service. And with respect to those new fleets, I assume all of our procurements are building these capabilities to be green, but all of the legacy fleets that you have are built on technologies that ultimately may not be very efficient in terms of energy use. So what can you do with the current fleets to actually make them more energy efficient, to contribute to some of these problems?
Thanks, sir. It's a good question, sir. Well, the Royal Canadian Navy is trying to change our technology, but our method is to exchange technology with different countries, friend countries, and NATO too, to improve our technology. What I mean, so is to change our energy sources. First of all, to change the kind of fuel we use right now, and the change of our electrical energy sources too. So we are checking new technology about generators, engines, and we are making some tests about our infrastructure on board, and we haven't, sir, a great results about this updates, but we have a lot of things to modify in order to take our goals down, sir. But we are working on it, sir.
Thank you, Admiral. I'm sure you are. For Mr. Picard, on the procurement side and looking at Canadian industry in terms of green technologies and the opportunity to really tap into the expertise, can you tell us a little bit more about the sectors in Canada that really will be making a substantial contribution, not only to the department maybe, but to the Government of Canada's overall green procurement and the technological sectors that will be contributing?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. On that point, what I could offer is we're really putting up front the government programs that are out there to bring industry where it's lagging behind in certain spaces. We're partnering up with ICED on numerous programs such as Build in Canada that issues challenges to industry to address certain problems, certain technological problems. And so this is a vehicle that PSPC puts up front so that we can match issues with capacity in industry. Also, what I would offer is that we're putting in place energy performance contracts. And in that space, we're challenging also industry to come up with cost savings with efficiencies in the renewal process of our infrastructures and of our fleets.
All right, thank you very much for that. Ms. Buck-Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a question for the Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy. Admiral, your first responsibility to the nation is to ensure that the Canadian Navy is fully trained, it's equipped, it's ready to conduct missions today and in the future, and it has to do so through the full spectrum of operations. So while dealing with environmental protection and climate change are certainly important, Admiral, are you not concerned that these greening efforts will simply be a distraction for the Navy and only add time and cost to our ship procurement? It could also give further advantage to our adversaries. Now, Ms. Bray, in her introduction, mentioned climate change as an existential threat. I might suggest that China and Russia should perhaps be more of a worry, and I don't think the Chinese government is spending a lot of time greening the People's Liberation Army.
Good question. Thank you very much. Well, actually, our goal is not to decrease our operational levels, it's to increase. But our change is step by step. What I mean is that the first thing we want to change is our land infrastructure. About technology and energy sources. The second is to change our engines, as I told before. But what do we have to do is to keep our operational level and to increase it. How? It's important for us that our vessel's lifetime, we want to increase the service time of our engines. How? Using different fuels. We are testing some different fuels from different countries and are great alternatives for us. And second, the weapon systems. Weapon systems right now are not, how can I say it, it's the same around the world, but the new technology is about weapons, for example, Magnetos weapons, laser systems. It's not available for naval industry, so we are going to keep our weapon systems and to increase our operational range in our fleet using new fuels.
All right, good. Thanks for that, Admiral. So obviously, there's a lot of threats that we face, and we have to be able to respond to them all. And over to my colleague from the Bloc Québécois.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess back to you, Admiral, on your a segue from your last comments to our Conservative member here, and on the topic of the alternative fuels. So it would strike me that if we could break the reliance on fossil fuels, we actually may have an operational advantage over our adversaries. Are you considering looking at going towards small nuclear-powered ships, sort of similar to how the U.S. Navy uses on their aircraft systems?
No, sir. Well, nuclear power is obviously is really, really good about talking about a range of operations range, but the pollution that it produces is really, really great. And we have a better alternative, sir. We are making some research about different petroleum sources and we are checking our range of capability to take in the ships, to increase the range, and the pollution could be reduced. We are making experiments, sir, right now, but nuclear power, definitely no, sir.
Okay, colleagues, I think we probably have time for another quick little round, and if it's okay, witnesses. So maybe I could come back to part of your opening remarks, Ms. Brays, talk a little bit about the fact that you have the largest footprint, of real property in the federal inventory, and you've already mentioned that where you're going to get the biggest savings are through kind of the infrastructure savings. Part of the environmental issues that we have, of course, are cleanup for contaminated sites. Could you tell us a little bit more about the overall cleanup efforts, including how industry is helping us with any of those cleanup efforts? I don't know what that might look like from how PSPC might be helping, but the issue is how are we progressing on the overall contaminated sites remediation?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That is certainly a very important initiative that has been highlighted in this strategy, and it, of course, predates this strategy. Canada has been working on remediation for quite some time, and in particular, the remediation on those sites that belong to our First Nations is particularly important to us as a result of our commitment to advancing reconciliation with our Indigenous people, to renewing that relationship, and to having meaningful engagement with our Indigenous groups, both during these remediations, but also as a whole, as part of all of our greening initiatives. In particular, if we were to take Esquimalt and the cleaning within the harbor, that was a partnership with our Indigenous communities, but it also leveraged what's called the, which I'm sure you're aware, the Federal Contaminated Site Action Plan, which made funds available in the millions of dollars for the Department of Defense to be able to conduct those remediation.
And who's doing this actual remediation work? I'm assuming it's not our members, the Canadian Forces, that are doing this. Like, who's doing this? Is this industry partners? How is this done?
It is not, you're absolutely correct, Mr. Chair, it is not entirely defense. It is partnered with industry, it's partnered with communities. In fact, this particular one created over 200 jobs within that region, and it also had a procurement process that took into consideration the Indigenous people of the First Nations in allocating funds in which the Indigenous Nations partnership created opportunities, economic opportunities for them, which resulted in millions of dollars of procurement with them.
And as a part of that, I know that the government's announced some investments for the North Warning System, NORAD modernization. Does that include the cleanup costs on the DEW line and all of that, which we've heard a lot about in the past as well? Do you know?
Certainly that would be taken into consideration, Mr. Chair, and I think that that's what this strategy is all about. This strategy is about looking at those types of initiatives that Defence is taking on board and ensuring that there is that environmental nexus to it, to ensure that we are doing everything that we can to assist the Government of Canada.
Thank you. I'm just going to turn it over quickly to my colleague.
Thank you. I will ask my one question after my colleague Chair asked his three, and I thank you very much for giving me the time, Mr. Chairman. So to do everything you've talked about, to increase the effectiveness and green the fleet, it seems to me you'll need more money. Also seems to me that D&D and the Canadian Armed Forces are constantly being asked to do more with less. So this is a question for ADMIE and probably our friend Monsieur Picard, too, from PSPC. Where are all the resources going to come from? The financial ones, the material, and personnel. I know the CAF is down at least 10,000 short of its optimal staffing rate.
Thank you very much. If you allow, I'll start with my colleague from PSPC and I'll close.
So with respect to, I'll focus on infrastructure, which has the biggest footprint in terms of GHG. We've put in place energy performance contracts. In a nutshell, what this allows for is for industry to finance upfront the cost of the renewals. And during the life cycle of the contract, the contractor will benefit from the economies of the use of energy. At the end of the contract, it's back to the client department, will gain those efficiencies. So that's one way to approach net zero in terms of the procurement strategy for the renewal.
Within ADMIE, we are continuously trying to rationalize our portfolio. As I mentioned, it is a huge portfolio, and we understand that across the country we have many challenges with our infrastructure. And part of that means divesting properties that we no longer require. It means demolition of properties we no longer require, and it means maximizing the use of the assets that we do have. And by doing that, we do have some cost savings that result from this rationalization. We also leverage Government of Canada programs as much as we can, and we bring in industry and key partners who then also benefit from these types of initiatives.
Okay, thank you. And our last question before I'm sure the bells are going to start ringing shortly to my friend from the Bloc Québécois.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So I guess my question, I want to bring it back to my home province of Quebec, and I'll address the question to Mr. Picard. So as you know, Davie Shipbuilding is a leader in marine technologies and innovation across the world. And I'm really interested to hear from the procurement perspective, the role, the type of contracts, how you see Davie's contributing to this green procurement.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. From a procurement perspective, I would offer that the bid submission process is an objective way to determine which proponent should be allowed to contract with the government. So any entity or proponent that is currently selected has gone through a very rigorous process. In terms of the value proposition, to really talk about this is an important point, is through the creation of these contracts, we're ensuring that ingrained into the contracting vehicles, there's a value proposition that's put up front by industry. And this will include creation of Canadian jobs. It's going to also fuel the research and development in order for industry to be able to produce and sustain the life cycle of the assets and services, and also to build capacity and training to make sure that industry stays on top of the technology and what's required by the Government of Canada.
So I can reassure my constituents then that Davies will be a very active partner in this procurement. Is that right?
If the bid submission has gone through and the bid has been accepted, yes.
Well, colleagues, I see that the bells are actually ringing, which means that we have a vote that we're going to need to head towards. So as much as I would like to have carried on with our conversation, I think we're going to have to stop it there. But I'd like to, first of all, thank my colleagues, as usual, for your excellent questions, and to our witnesses for your forthright answers on some issues that helped certainly our committee better understand the issues of what defense is doing for greening technologies and for protecting our environment, which certainly our government recognizes as a really important priority for Canada and all Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We don't actually have to go for a vote, but that's the end of that is the end of this session. So first of all, well done, and let's just kind of open it up to you to say, how do you think it went? And maybe Dominic, we'll start with you.
I think it went relatively well. The nerves get to you, so the words that you recited in your head as you were falling asleep last night kind of escape you in the moment. But I think overall it went pretty well. For myself, I tried to continue to stay on message and bring it back up to strategy is good. Every little bit counts. And I tried to hand over to my peers when it was appropriate, but I think there was a really good mix of questions for the three of us, so that wasn't required.
Yeah, good. And Fernando, how do you think it went? Commander of the Navy?
For me, talking about me, my first obstacle is the language.
Yes.
So all the night was trying to check some keywords to understand the correct meaning of questions.
Yeah.
I think I did.
You did good.
Well,
Yeah, you did.
I think you did very well.
Yeah.
Yes, but the second is really good, sir. It's a good experience. This is not my first time in front of the committee in Mexico, but obviously it was in Spanish. But I think it's real similar, and it's a good opportunity to learn and how the Canadian government is working right now, and how can we work in Mexico, take pros about you and to implement it in Mexico, and it's really, really useful for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good, very good, and I think you did very well, Fernando.
Yeah.
All of our international students are working in your second languages. It's a demonstration of courage to be able to stand up and put yourself out there. La próxima vez vamos a intentar en español por su.
Okay, sir?
No.
Okay, good. Alex.
Yeah, I just want to echo Fernando's comments. I thought this was super useful. When you're kind of preparing, It doesn't, you know you're going to learn something, but after it's done, there's some confidence building too. So no, really appreciate the exercise. Personally, I think I could have done better on your question about industry, but managed to bring back some of the key messaging. So I think that's kind of what we want to accomplish here. Other than that,
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You know,
Good
I
questions.
think if you don't know exactly, you don't either have it at the tip of your hands, come back to your key messages, and things are going to move on.
Yeah.
Okay, colleagues, Carrie,
Yeah.
any thoughts?
So I wrote a note to General Thibault while I was sitting there. I went, holy smokes, they're doing good. So congratulations, you did good.
Thank you.
You stayed calm in the face of some pretty annoying questions, including from the member here. You owned it. Excellent answer. You know, when I was coming in with negative questions, you owned it. Yes, absolutely. We've got problems with our procurement process. And all of you did that in a way. You really addressed the question, you seized it, and you were answering the questions, but with the answers you wanted to give, rather than the answers that we were pushing towards, that some of them were traps. All three of you did that extremely well. Some kind of constructive criticism, I guess.
I drink too much water.
No, didn't even notice. It's all good.
I'm sure the people watching are like, this guy's thirsty.
Sorry, let them speechify. So sometimes they'll be doing political speeches in front of the camera, and I was doing a bit of that. So let them speechify. Even if you know the answer, give them the space. It's the chair's job to shut me down, so give them the space. So your eagerness to answer is perfect, but just, give it that little space. You weren't rattled, except you started to look uncomfortable on the Davie point. There's actually another answer, but unless you live the NSS, you could have said, there are named shipyards in the NSS. Davie is one of them, and
Yeah, I was 50-50 on it.
yeah,
And-
$2 million, and you wouldn't want to get into the amounts of money that have gone to the different shipyards. You don't want to go there, but you could say, yes, we've been doing a lot of work with Davie and the other named shipyards in the NSS, and thanks for your question, and then drive back to your answer. So you'll have to practice the poker face, because your discomfort showed just for a nanosecond on your face, and then you went back into your message. So, your answer was really good there. But as one of the former DMs of D&D said to me, his very bad and very good advice was on committee appearances was, be boring. So it's bad advice, but it's also good advice. So use your poker face and just pop out your messages. Don't flinch, don't react. I think that's it.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
What about you, Omar?
Yeah, I think it went very well as well. I think the opening statement was particularly strong in terms of framing the problem and giving both sides of the challenges of trying to get green on one side, but hey, we still have operational capabilities that we need to maintain. Yeah, the question on Davies was a little bit of a red herring to see if we'd go down a rabbit hole, but the piece to be assured with there is that in the preparations from D-Parlay, they will go through each one of the portfolios of the committee members, and they'll prep you and they'll say, hey, he may get a question because this guy or his constituents have this sort of vested interest in this area. So you'll be prepared by D-Parlay for those type of questions. So well done.
Yeah, I thought that the opener was really good, really well paced. Covered the ground. So congratulations on that. Fernando, I don't know if you were expecting the question on nuclear and or not.
Good for you.
But it was a good question, I have to say. Well done. And bottom line, had you thought a little bit about this before?
No, sir. Well,
But it was a good
I told you,
answer.
sir.
It was a good answer. You sort of said we got better
as I
solutions.
told you,
than that.
sir, my first
shake
goal to be in Mexican Navy was to research about military technology. I love military technology. So when I saw the first nuclear carrier and the first nuclear cruise of U.S. Navy, talking about, obviously it's cheap, but the pollution is too high. In case of one reactor broke,
Yeah.
it's really dangerous.
Well, so I think
So-
the bottom line was
Question-
it
well,
was
was-
it
no.
was a good question, which in the end is a part of our overall greening strategy. Where does nuclear fit within all of this? You know, and it was a good answer, and I think you did very well. So congratulations, well done. And so now, of course. The other thing you should be, of course, thinking about is you're going to be going into a scrum, and they, as was mentioned yesterday, they'll be picking up because they've been watching the interview, so they'll be picking up on some of the themes that you've been talking about today. So you should be also thinking about, okay, what did I say there? And it may come back to you, so you might want to think a little bit about having a chance to come back as well. Okay, good luck.
Thanks, sir.